Sir, how can the international community hold Israel accountable for its actions in Gaza and Lebanon, even though for the last year they have operated with relative impunity?
The international community, there are two methods of practicing pressure on any country that violates the international law. The Statute of the United Nations stipulated explicitly that any threat against the international peace and security, the UN Security Council can interfere using Chapter 7 to deter this country. As you know, Israel has the impunity of US veto. So resorting to this chapter is almost impossible because of the frequent use of veto right by the United States of America. So no resolution can be taken against Israel. Even the single decision taken by the UN Security Council on ceasefire, it was interpreted by the United States and Israel that it's optional, so they have the freedom to choose either to stop the war or not. The second way in the international law is resorting to the international courts, like the International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice takes decisions in this regard, providing that the state concerned has signed an agreement or the statute of the International Court of Justice, which is Rome Law of 1992. Israel signed the agreement on prohibiting or banning the genocide. That's why it's obliged to obey the International Court of Justice. Even the decisions of the International Court of Justice are rejected by Israel. As for the International Criminal Court, we know that it accused Israeli leaders of genocide crimes and war crimes. And that's why we find that the international community is unable to practice any kind of pressure in the light of the absolute support of the United States and Europe to Israel. That's why the resolution is in the hands of Netanyahu. He decides when to end the war and when to continue it.
Sir, we'll get to the idea of the International Court, because the International Court is a long process. But for now, with what's happening in the north of Gaza, the situation is quite dire and very urgent. What can the international community do to stop what's happening right now to the north, where they've been cut off through telecommunications and they have been starved for the last 2 weeks?
It seems that the international community is unable to do anything because the international the United States agrees with what Netanyahu does. They issue some statements that they want to end the war, but there's no actual pressure on Israel or in Netanyahu in particular, or on this extremism government to cease fire. That's why Israel continues to commit crimes. Israel wants to create an isolating area in northern Gaza, similarly to what happens in south of Lebanon. That's why it tries widely to evacuate northern Gaza, since this area forms strategic depth for Israel. They are shy in claims from the European countries and the United States. Even when it comes to the entrance of aid, Israel targets the aid, targets the residential areas, and continues the genocide and the aggression. They are working on ethnic cleansing. That's why it's not feasible anymore to discuss a clear international stance here. I'm referring urgently to the statement of the German chancellor to his recent visit to Turkey, when he spoke explicitly that what Netanyahu does and what Israel does in Gaza is not a genocide crime. Based on this, it's clear for us that the policy of the West goes in line with what Netanyahu does in the region. All the statements we see and hear are shy statements. They do not practice any pressure on Israel, and Israel continues its military operations, and they continue their weapon support and financial support to Israel, which increases the appetite of Netanyahu and Israel to continue the war until they eliminate Hamas, which is their goal, and even eliminate whole Gaza Strip.